Let's get a little ambient noise here. That's good. Welcome to Device Squad, everybody, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propellix. I am here with my good friend Lisa Vandalian.
Hi.
We're in the car and we're driving to the Uber office where she works.
Yes, I take all my interviews in the car because I work for Uber.
That's right.
Yes.
They're required to do that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the benefits of working in technology is that you wind up with a lot of smart friends.
They're going to say smartphones.
And smartphones. But none of my friends are as all-around smart or as funny as my guest today, Lisa Vandalian. And none of them have done half of what she has. Like, don't you speak like 6 languages or something?
16.
16 languages?
No.
Oh, you don't speak 16
I don't.
languages?
I'm not sure. Do I? Anyway, I'm not going to recite them. Anyway, let's move on.
Yes, okay. Welcome to Device Squad, fighting crimes against enterprise mobility worldwide. Bad UI, frustrating user experiences, poorly conceived mobile strategies, we defeat them all. This podcast series will cover all aspects of enterprise mobility, including strategy, development, design, testing, and more. My name is Steve Brickman. I'm a mobile strategist and UX architect with Propellix. First, a brief history of the company. Founded in 2011, Propellix is a mobile strategy consultancy helping enterprises worldwide devise true mobile strategies and develop world-class mobile applications across all industry verticals. Propellix clients include large companies like Amway, Bright Horizons, Bank of Montreal, Dubai Airports, Family Dollar, DLL, Cintas, Merck, and many more. Propellix menu of services includes 8 different mobile kickstarts covering everything from mobile strategy and road mapping to MCOE to UI UX design to mobile testing strategy, along with soup to nuts app design development and support. Additionally, Propellix offers 3 homegrown enterprise mobile products. Lisa is a senior design researcher with Uber with a background in linguistic anthropology and cross-cultural education. And I apologize for my cold here, people. Lisa's foreground is propelled by a boundless curiosity about real human needs and opportunities. I like that. Did you write that?
Yeah, I wrote that. No, but the thing is the background and then the foreground. I think that's like the clever
thing. That's good.
Oh, no one gets it.
You know what? Yeah, that was a little opaque. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's cute, though.
Okay, anyway.
Drawing upon a broad array of qualitative research methods, Lisa provides deep insights that inform product strategy, solution innovation, and user delight and empowerment. Oh, I like user delight.
Oh, it's all about the delight.
I love getting to the bottom of a problem and designing just the right research to solve it. I have been energized by that challenge for over 12 years. Your specialties include strategic ethnography. That's cool. Contextual interviews, collaborative, participatory, co-design, generative research, design thinking research, mentorship and coaching, survey design, desirability testing, focus groups, journey mapping, card sorting, and user testing. So the irony is that I'm here in San Francisco to do a focus group for one of our clients, and I have the user delight of interviewing you, Lisa, right here in the car.
Right.
And the rain noise may be a little much for people, but hopefully they can deal with it.
It is not a prop. It is real rain.
This is real rain.
Right.
And that dam hasn't burst yet, right?
No, not yet. Still, I listen in every day. All
right. So first, just tell us about your digital journey.
So I had a very analog journey, sort of in academia. I was teaching writing and doing some international things, just bopping around. And then in 1999, I looked around and said, what's this World Wide Web thing? Which is probably really a long time before or after everybody else. But this was in Boston. And so because it was 1999, you could quit your job and just find another job. And I did. And it was in educational technology. And I was an online editor for this ed tech company. And I would just interview people and put out a newsletter every week, which, when I think about it now, is really horrifying because the deadlines were terrible. That was 3.5 years of doing various things, and it was all, of course, online because it was online education. And they did some user testing, and they needed somebody in-house to do the pilot test. And so I was the person for that round, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is this intersection of like everything I love? Learning and tech and everything. And so very fortunately, and I've cashed in a lot of karma points over the years, I got laid off just as I had applied to Bentley, which is a university outside of Boston, Bentley's Human Factors in Information Design master's program. And so that was just sort of like, I was just going to take one class every so often, and here I was able to go full-time. I got an assistantship, so the timing could not have been better for the layoff. I call it the propitious layoff. And so I studied and whatever, and then when I was finished, went into, of all things, financial services, which really, if anybody, like, I haven't balanced my checkbook. I don't even know what that is, like, in at least a decade, probably, like, more than that, because I was like an early adopter of online banking. And so I started out just doing online competitive analyses for this agency that specialized in that. It wasn't such a great fit, but I needed to stay because I was having a complete career change. So I was like, I have to have 2 years. So I stayed there 2 years, and then I left as soon as I could, and I moved to Fidelity, where I was at first an information architect, which on the West Coast is known as an interaction designer, which they don't have IAs here, they have IDs, which is kind of interesting. Strange, but I used to do all my own field research, and I enjoyed that a lot more than the design. So when I went to a job also in banking, Bank of America, and I started out as an IA and then moved into the research team, where I was officially a usability engineer. You're cutting a lot of this, right? You're going to cut some. Okay, anyway. And so anyway.
I'm keeping that.
Okay. Oh, look at Uber. Every single car around here has an Uber sticker, by the way.
That's so funny.
Everything. Everywhere. All the Priuses are totally Ubers. So anyway, I went to Bank of America and then stayed there for 5.5 long years. And so then I worked at Ancestry.com and set up their research program, which was really fun because as soon as I said, I work for Ancestry, they were like, oh my God, I love Ancestry. My grandmother loves it. So that was really gratifying.
That's nice.
So I did that for 2 years, and then I joined Uber, and I've been there for about almost a year.
Yeah.
And that's where our story ends or begins, as you choose.
You mentioned that, there's some things you can't tell me about Uber, but as much as you can, like, tell me, like, what your
day-to-day
average day is like. Yeah.
I get there at about 7 because, like every other company here, we have so many meetings during the day that you really have to, like, do your work outside of work hours.
Yeah.
I'm kind of kidding, but not really. I mean, at any one time, I probably have 2 projects that I'm working on, and at Uber, I'm a senior researcher. I lead up the research for the driver recognition, so that's like ratings. And so riders rating drivers, but like the experience of drivers receiving the ratings, loyalty, and appreciation type thing, compliments. I don't know if you've seen the little compliment stickers. That was my project. It was funny. I just finished the process for teams to internationalize their compliments because, certain things, of course, it's very,
they don't translate.
They don't, especially in the imagery too. So, really important that if you're complimenting someone, you want to compliment them on something that it matters to them. So, anyway, I will be involved in 1 or 2, like right now I have 2 projects I'm working on. They're both interview based. One will be kind of more sort of a co-design little mini workshop with some drivers, and then the other is just plain interviews. We do a lot of remote work. One of them will be remote, one of them will be face-to-face, and that's always really fun. The researchers are embedded in our teams, so although we have a really big research team, about like I don't know, 35 people internationally. And nationally, most of us are in San Francisco, but not all. We do get a chance to meet and talk, once a week, and we have like meetups and stuff in house. So
let's just back up a bit. Like a lot of the people listening are, some of them are listening for just general information about the field that you're in. So, you said, I love getting to the bottom of a problem and designing just the right research to solve it. So, how do you go about designing a research sort of
that's a great question.
Like that? You know what I mean?
As a researcher, I'm beholden or whatever to answerable to the product manager and a design manager and a bunch of people who are marketing and stuff, and so they'll all have business questions. My experience throughout this field is that everyone thinks that a survey or a focus group will take care of every research need, and they don't. You need different, like asking somebody, do you like it, isn't going to give you the answer of can you use it, would you use it, and everything. And so I have to guide my clients, which are my internal clients, which are like the PMs and stuff. Sometimes they don't know the actual question that they want the answer to. And so different methods, you can only design or select a method based on the question that you want the answer to. And so if you want to know whether drivers, would like compliments or whatever, you're not necessarily going to show them the compliments and say, ask what are your feelings on a scale of 1 to 10, but you would take a step back and ask them, what are you most proud of as a driver?
Yeah.
What's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to you, as a rider?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And so that's not something the product managers necessarily would think of. And
because that's a real intersection of language and psychology.
Oh my God, totally. And emotion, with, recognition and loyalty and stuff like that. That is emotion. People are not, they're just going to take everything with a grain of salt. And sometimes a usability test, if it's too early, that's not going to give you anything. That's not going to, see if people can use things. But you can test with just a paper prototype and just kind of draw things out and say, what would you do here? And that's good enough. So it also depends on the method, also depends on where you are in the process. And so sometimes the team will come to me a little too late. I have had projects where people will say, we really want to find out, it's the foundational research. We want to find out people's feelings and whatever. Oh, and by the way, we've already built the prototype. So, and this happens everywhere. We've already built the prototype, so could you... What's going on here? Can I park there? Okay.
All right, sweet. Pause for now. All right, so we're back. So now we are in a tiny little conference room at the Uber office, which is just stunning and crazy. I feel like I'm in the future. So do you want to talk about your...
I know kind of where I was. So I'm at any one time immersed in 2 different projects that are usually at a different stage. Sometimes the internal clients, so the product managers or whatever, they think they want a survey or they think they want a focus group when really the answers that they get won't be available from that. And so that's the researcher's job to kind of guide them to pull out the actual questions and then have a method to match that. So that's what I mean by being obsessed with the right method.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between focus groups and the other types?
Sure,
just real basic, rudimentary kind of stuff.
So focus groups are typically kind of like the taste test scenario that a lot of people, I guess, have seen on TV. Mad Men was all about that, where people would say it's a lot about opinion and about what they would do or would like. And so that's the domain, along with very big surveys, is the domain of market research, which really looks at opportunities and potential, whereas design research or user research looks at what people actually do. So focus groups and large surveys are marketing research, whereas design research, you're more involved in how people have done something in the past, or you're observing what they currently do, their current work practices, in order to see how you could make it better. It's the thing that I really love to look at are workarounds. Like, so watching people and like either they have a Post-it or they have a little script that they made themselves or just some totally makeshift thing that shows you that there's a gap in the experience, you know?
We did some work for an auto loan refinance company, and their software was so bad, they would pull like calculators in from other websites.
Exactly.
And they were pulling like data in from other websites, and they would cut and paste it.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
It wasn't even their stuff. It was just like, well, this guy has this functionality, so we use that. And I hadn't thought about applying that as a general rule to actually look for those.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of times, like, the market research tends to be in, like, kind of a pristine environment. You know, people are brought together in a very unnatural situation. Not that it's not anything wrong with it, but it just isn't home. And so what design research tends to do is we go and just sort of observe. Some people call them fly on the wall observations, where you literally are just taking notes and you might interrupt and say, I'm sorry, what did you just do there? But typically you don't want to interrupt people's flow. You just want to watch it.
Yeah, we do that. We call it day in the life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We drove around with the Cintas guys in their trucks. And
yeah, isn't that amazing? I love that kind of stuff.
I love that too. There's always such a huge disconnect between what management thinks they do and what they actually do and how they get their work done.
And that's why you really need the research, because, you know, ideas, you know, from above are not always the ones that make the biggest difference in people's lives.
Exactly.
And then people don't use your product.
They're usually not even correct. I mean,
there are a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what I have done in my career is putting assumptions up front and then testing the assumptions right off the bat. And so there are assumptions that people like certain things when they might, but they might not like them or need them as urgently as something else. You've just lost out on a huge business opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, you must see that all the time.
We do. So how much of what you do is like mobile versus desktop?
100% is mobile. We do have an Uber.com corporate website, of course.
Which is just like marketing.
Press releases and publicly available information about the company and CEO and everything. I'm pretty sure that you can order an Uber online or do Uber Eats, like an order, you know, something. I've done the Uber Eats online because I lost my phone at one point and I had to get an Uber, so I did it online. But everything is mobile. In fact, in my whole life now, I rarely open my computer. I do everything on my phone. I mean, I would have thought that the iPad would be more of a replacement, but really it's just the phone.
And you're integrating Amazon Echo now. I saw that you can order an Uber through that.
Yes. That's a different team from my team, but isn't that...
Well, the thing for me, it feels very risky because I know Sadie. Like, if I even mention that that's a thing...
Oh, my God.
Or if she hears one of us doing it, she'll start just ordering Ubers all the time.
She knows what an Uber is, do you think? Like, does she...
I think if she heard us do it and then saw that a car showed up, she would be so excited about that she would definitely...
That is awesome.
We would just have to give all our money to Uber at that point. And the other thing that I noticed, this is kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but we're sort of going that direction. Like, I've noticed like more integration, at least on the iPhone, where if you tap on an address and it'll, you know, you get the panel that'll come up and it'll say like, you know, if you want an Uber.
That's the partnership team, like business development and stuff. It's a different team. We're I wouldn't say siloed in a bad way, but it's more, you know, segmented, and there are researchers who are responsible on those design and product teams.
It's just so neat that this time that we're living in is so cool. Like, especially where UX, where like, you know, 10 years ago was hardly even a recognized field, and now it's this massive.
Yeah. I mean, even regular people know what it is. Yeah. They don't know what user experience, like they don't know what the U and the X are, but they know that UX is design. And people talk about what was a bad user experience. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And when you and I started,
God.
They weren't even they weren't calling it anything.
No,
design.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And now it's to the point where the UX is so good and so in everybody's minds that you can just literally just call an Uber in the air, and then an Uber's going to come and get you.
So my dad was ill, as you know, a couple of years ago and passed away. But before then, I wish I'd had an ability. It's a lot easier now, and it's certainly, you're able to do it, but I would have been so helped by calling an Uber to pick him up with my stepmother and take them to a doctor appointment or whatever. It's like there's a pilot. I don't know if it's a pilot or if it's just at this point an implementation, but With healthcare, it's with either a rehab center for the elderly or a nursing home or something, but it has really revolutionized the patients or whatever's lives, but also the families. We do have a service called Uber Assist. One of the requirements is that you have to have a van with a ramp.
Is there anything, I know when you request an Uber, maybe something where you can just specify an additional, like, I'm going to need more help because I have a broken leg or whatever.
Well, there are notes that, like, you can put, text to the driver, but not, I don't think, wrapped up in the request.
Yeah.
I mean, you can definitely choose which type of service, like that Uber Assist, but I don't believe it's sort of geared toward mobile, but people who need a little extra help. I will say, though, that our drivers are so amazing, and I know this because we see comments and compliments, like written notes and stuff, that thank them. He went above and beyond. He or she, like, took my groceries up. Like, some of the things are very emotional and very personal.
Yeah.
And people, it's like the best of human nature.
Do you remember, like, any really amazing
Didn't
save
have
my
to
life?
do it.
Anybody say
Like, maybe figuratively.
You want to do that? You want to set that up, like a PR?
Yeah,
thing?
that would be good. That
Like,
would
we'll
be
just
good.
like say that it happened.
Yeah,
and then,
Uber life.
Yeah, Uber saved my life.
Yeah,
Get a
hashtag.
good PR. You could probably use a little good PR
Right.
by now.
We have a lot of blind drivers. I mean, you can imagine how great this is mobility-wise.
Blind? Do you mean deaf drivers? Blind drivers?
Riders.
Yeah. Okay.
Riders. Oh my God, that's hilarious. We have deaf drivers too, but blind riders.
Blind
Oh my
riders,
God.
yeah.
See, driver, rider, they're so similar.
That's
It's like
unfortunate.
very unfortunate.
Yeah.
We should change that.
Yeah.
Yes, we have blind drivers. Yeah.
That's how good they are.
Yes, that's that. Well, that's the autonomous car. I mean, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
That's
that would
happening.
be huge.
Yeah.
Holy cow. But there was a story recently, and it was just around here because we have a lighthouse for the blind like a block away, and a deaf driver got a blind passenger.
Wow.
And that was like... So the blind driver didn't realize, like, if you have a deaf or rider, if you have a deaf driver...
Oh, you don't call them passengers. You call
No,
them
we call them riders. Yeah. So that's I'll say passenger if you want, but just to avoid confusion. But let's say you get a deaf driver, a little, like, note will pop up to the rider and say, by the way, your driver happens to be hearing impaired, and so you may need to write things down or whatever. I've never had it. And it's a shame because I signed, so I would really like... I've met one deaf driver, and I've interviewed him for, like, research, but I'm dying to have that situation, but I haven't yet.
That is
Get where I go.
fascinating, all
Yeah,
these
it is
edge
really...
cases that you don't even think about.
So just as with really everything, when you have an adaptation for the disabled, so that's like kind of universal design kind of thing, it will infiltrate the homogeneous population, like the rest of us. And so some of the technology, like that heads up for deaf drivers, could easily be adapted for other... I mean, I can't think of any use cases right now, but it's the same way that, like, all of the voice recognition stuff came as an assist for the blind. Like, and now we have all of that, and like curb cuts and doors, handles that aren't like the round knob, in lower facilities and stuff. And I just think that is so fascinating how you look at like the edge case, and then you solve for it in a way that's like a universally applicable. I think that there's so much we can learn.
The Uber driver that actually drove me last night was saying that one of the big issues is connecting the rider with the driver.
Yeah.
The initial pickup.
Yeah, especially when there are a lot of people all waiting on the same corner.
Yeah, and he said that you guys are like experimenting with like different colored logos for the car. It just occurred to me that you could add a component on the rider side where the same color, their screen would just show that color.
That is what happens.
And then they hold it up and they match it.
I haven't seen it. I know it's being piloted in the public, but it's called Beacon. Yeah, it is a good idea.
There used to be an app called Beer Tender or something for in the bar.
that's brilliant.
When it's a loud bar and you put what beer you want and you just hold it up and you show
that
a
is
beer.
so smart. I mean,
It's kind of like that.
See, that's how necessity is the mother of invention. Totally.
Well, yeah, beer is definitely a
That
necessity.
is such necessity.
Yeah. So how much influence does your work have on the final design? I mean, obviously there's such a huge company and like it must go through it must take a long time for new ideas to be implemented and then to show up.
Well, like any company and any project, it depends. Some other priority could come and like bump another project down, lower down, or market conditions could change. Who knows? But I mean, once an idea is there and vetted a little bit like by the higher up people, and then we do either market and or user research or design research to test the viability a little bit and do some poking around. And then we are very agile. So we experiment a lot, not like a prototypical experiment, but that's fully coded and operational. And then we do A/B testing to see the impact, or multivariate testing. And I mean, it's kind of been built, but then a lot of times it gets tweaked. Like if there are 3 different directions, you want to pick the best one and then fully test that out. So it's not that it takes a long time. It can be really, really fast, actually. I've seen things move really quickly.
If it has a huge impact.
Yeah, if it has a huge impact, if people are really clamoring for it.
I worked at PayPal for a little bit. They had us redesign check flow and sort of more edge cases.
Yeah.
I don't even know if PayPal is still doing checks and stuff, but at the time they were, and none of our work went anywhere. It was just...
I mean, that's been my experience everywhere. It's sort of like more 40-60, if like 40 on the not being used side.
Yeah.
And what's frustrating in a lot of companies is when you've done all the work and then the design still goes out the way that you had reported that it maybe shouldn't. And, you know, it's not the researcher's job to like say you shouldn't do this, you should. You just give the information and then let them make the decision, but you can make recommendations. And so it can be hard when there's no time to implement the recommendations. That's why the user-centered design process really has to start beforehand. Like before something is built, even before wireframes, because why would you put all that effort into something that it doesn't have a chance? Or I'll be generous and say it's a healthy tension, but I'm not, of course, from my perspective, I would rather they just like do it the way that I want them to do it.
Right.
It's the same in my marriage.
Lisa's husband and I go way back, so...
I think it's industry standard, but there are always different experiences. But user research and design research.
So the difference.
Because we are design researchers, and I kind of gravitate more toward positions called design researcher.
Yeah. So what is the difference?
Yeah. So in my mind, I think of design research as something that comes up that you should be engaged in very early. It's kind of the stuff it sounds like you do at Propellix, like strategic problem finding and like seeing whether there's something to be solved, and you ideate a lot of design thinking type of methods go into it, where you're just talking with people up front, but kind of in the back of your mind, you're thinking about an overall design of an ecosystem or of a service, or maybe at the product level, but it certainly is nothing to do with an interface. It has more to do with like the whole interaction and then what happens at the end. People refer to that as design research because it really is like researching a solution, whereas I think of user research as it's like sort of seeing the users of that design, because if you don't have the design, you don't have the users. And they're very closely related, but I think of user research more a little bit later in the process, like where you're bouncing certain ideas off users already. And I mean, there needs to be a lot of user interviews and stuff, and it's all user-centered or human-centered with the design research, but it's like a little bit of a different focus, and I think it comes earlier in the game.
So is user research just more granular, kind of? Or?
Yeah, you want to answer different questions.
Yeah.
It's more like, would they use it? How would they use it? Would it be advantageous? Like, show me how you would implement this solution. Or, I'm going to give you a prototype, even if it's just paper, and I want you to walk me through it and tell me your feelings about this and that.
Earlier you mentioned like the fly on the wall process, the day in the life process, and you were talking about how Uber is asking all the employees here, designers and stuff, to actually become drivers. Can you talk about that? That's really cool.
Well, it's really neat. This year for Uber is the year of the driver, and not that it kind of hasn't always been, but everything is devoted to the driver and driver obsession. And customer obsession is one of our cultural values, and so there's a big encouragement for everybody to have the experience of a driver. And so that's been really interesting. We're like secret shoppers. We all do our like little diaries and pass it into the team that's responsible. And I had an issue uploading some documents, and I happened to know who the PM was, and he went over to engineering and said, there's a problem with this, let's look into it. And they fixed it, like right there on the spot. And that was perfect. You know, it really, really worked. So.
Like on the setup side?
Yeah,
for
on the setup. Yeah,
oh,
for
wow.
like, because you have to upload a lot of documents, of course.
Yeah, sure.
And your license and stuff. And I was
Criminal
in an infinite,
record.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I was in an infinite loop, you know, but it's not there anymore. So.
And as a UX person,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
would they
I had a
want
lot to
more?
say. Yeah.
Do you know of any other elements that were like improved or revealed out of this process?
Definitely there's more attention to onboarding and like driver education. You know, companies can always do a better job with that. So there are projects.
The Uber app actually changes pretty frequently. It seems to be improved. Like, what's
Yeah.
to you? What is the most exciting or the best improvement that you've seen recently?
Well, you're talking from the rider side, of course.
Yeah, right.
So I am on the recognition team, which is part of driver engagement, which is part of the driver org. And so ratings and driver-rider interactions and the compliments that went out and that sort of thing is my team's domain. And so
That's amazing.
Why?
Because what I do with Propelix is we go in and we'll like look at their processes, we'll
Yeah.
sort of update them,
Yeah.
redesign them,
Yeah.
wireframe them,
Yeah.
and prototype it all in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So we have to do the whole thing.
That's amazing. Wow.
So to hear like it's so granular here where you're
Oh,
in charge
yeah.
of,
Oh,
like,
you
a
have no
very
idea.
small
Yeah.
element of the process.
Yeah.
Is that ever a problem where things become disparate, like based on your style, somebody else's style, and they don't mesh up?
Well,
or-
there are very closely followed standards for that, you know, for the, not the skin, but like the interaction patterns and stuff.
Yeah.
Every company, every big company I've worked at has that like has, you know, a single product or a product. There are always style sheets and stuff. So that doesn't happen. But it is sometimes, I mean, different parts of an app are written by different people or at different times, you know, and so people can come and go. Or every so often there are reviews in places I've worked at where you just sort of take stock that everything has the same voice
Yeah.
a lot of times.
It really is like almost like an editorial voice where you want
yeah.
the tone of all the
Yeah.
content to be the same.
Oh, totally.
And UX can be
Yeah.
so different depending on
God.
who's designing it.
I worked on a project. It was really interesting, actually, at Bank of America, where we were going to develop a new visual and editorial style. And so we had two that we showed people, and like 3 pages of 2 different, completely different designs. And so we showed them to people. We had them set up with galvanic skin response and eye tracking. And so we could see what they were looking at, when they were kind of excited, and then what they were saying at the time. And so it was all like really well, you know, correlated or whatever. And then we sort of made the recommendation. I think it's been implemented, actually. I don't know. But that's like really interesting to see the difference in like, hey, how you doing today? We're going to help you save money, like first person or saying we and you, and whereas Bank of America can help our customers get their financial solutions, you know, third person and very more corporate. And so that kind of thing is
With emphasis
we
on
have
what the bank is doing versus what the
very
user
much,
is
very
benefiting.
much. Yeah, and so that is a decision. You know, there are design pillars and brand attributes and stuff that you want to stick to. And I think every decent company, I don't know, has that at least. And I kind of feel like helping derive the design principles is part of the researcher's job. I don't think it's just marketing or the product team. I think that, you know, when you're interviewing people and they talk about the things that are important to them, if that is not rolled into the product, it's really either a lost opportunity or you're going to miss the mark.
The eye tracking and the galvanic skin response, do you do that a lot?
No, that was a one-time deal. It was very expensive. It was, I think we were like a pilot for this particular company. We actually have someone on staff who focuses on the visual.
When I was at PayPal, we used for user testing little cameras that
the
sit on the phone
ePivo or something. Yeah, I know that, like with a thing, and then
and then you can track their hand movements and stuff with that. What do you guys use for that stuff?
We use a situation like that. A lot of times I'll screencast my or a user's phone so that they can just have it normally and we can see it and then record it with QuickTime.
Yeah.
And then we also have like, you know, picture in pictures. We can see their grimaces or smiles or whatever. But a lot of times we do research in the car. So we have a camera watching their face. We have their interface plugged into our computer so we can see that, and then sometimes we have a cam up on top of the car, like a GoPro, and then we're looking at what they're seeing. It all depends on what you're, like if you're looking at how people make turns or I don't know, whatever, then that's the sort of thing you'd need. It's very elaborate.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But other than that, a lot of it is like face-to-face or remote face-to-face, like real-time research. Like I know some companies really use a lot of like usertesting.com or user Zoom to do intercepts that are very, I guess, cost effective and stuff, but you can't go on the fly and think about like and ask follow-up questions like you're doing.
Right.
So
can you talk about some of the issues that you've seen? So you're in the driver's side,
yep.
and you're doing ratings, and you're doing compliments.
Yeah, compliments and rider-driver interactions.
I'm wondering, like, where you saw like the biggest problems with that interaction, and the interactions that you are most excited about.
Yeah,
or improvements that you really are excited about.
It's interesting because with drivers and riders, you have two different apps, unless you're a rider who is also a driver, but that use case aside. A lot of times, especially in the early days, riders didn't really understand what drivers were going through, and a lot of it is dependent on the map, a navigation system, and things that are beyond, like traffic or an accident, or the rider cut it too close to get to the airport, and now they're asking the driver to speed. I mean, I've heard stories, and I'm sure a lot of people. And so because it's so ubiquitous now, I mean, Uber is a verb, regardless of what service you use. Yeah. Because of that, it's become something that people can take a little bit of advantage of, or start to treat drivers like a commodity more than like real people sharing their vehicle. And we've all kind of heard stories about riders behaving badly. And so, violent and horrible and stuff. So there's a lot to be done in the relationship,
sort of
education,
like humanizing the driver more. I mean, just sort of.
Well, it's more making the riders, I think. So, the drivers, I don't think they're at fault.
Right.
Like some drivers think that they're your personal chauffeur, or that they are like trained taxi drivers that know everywhere in the city and whatever. And it's
so they're
not
kind of proud of. Is that what you're saying? They're like proud of what they're doing.
Yeah. Or maybe they're like Uber to a lot of immigrant families and to other people. It's the American dream.
Yeah.
It's like you're entrepreneurial. We even make it easy for you to get a car and lease a car and stuff. And so there's a lot of, as you say, pride. But sometimes people aren't from the given city where they're in. And so they rely very much on our app, our amazing app that is, fallible too if the satellite's down or whatever it is.
Sure.
And so the thing that like riders don't really behave with a lot of empathy, really, and respect and politeness, and like a lot of things that are sometimes shocking.
Could be drunk.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Uber is such a gift for drunk people.
Oh yeah, we have saved so many lives if you think about it with drunk driving. Oh, it's horrible. It's completely changed everything.
I mean, it's real. That's a legitimate benefit to society.
Oh my God,
huge
totally.
benefit. You speak a bunch of languages, and, we came in here and you were talking about riders versus passengers, and we went through the door and you said it's not tailgating, it's pigging, and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, how have you been able to use your language skills in your work, and how has that played a part?
A little bit. I was recently looking at the Latin America-based compliments, like those little circle stickers that are really fun and have had a lot of enthusiasm from drivers and riders. So we really wanted to make sure that they were culturally relevant. Like I said, you don't want to compliment people on things they don't care about.
Yeah.
And so we did a survey, and we looked at past compliments, and all this was in Spanish and Portuguese. That was really, really fun to see. Like there was one that was like, we have here great music. And it just never came up. It came up once that I remember in the Latin American compliments. And I was like, oh, that's funny. But maybe everybody has great music, so it's not like it's just an expected thing. I don't know.
Or it's just not something that people really care about, the music.
And yet, on the driver's side, one of the background questions was what are you most proud of? And what's the highest compliment? And drivers said that they were most proud of the term honorable and digno. So I don't know, it's Italian, but like dignified almost. And riders had said the driver was very educado, which is sort of like educated, but like more in a like manners. And so
genteel.
Yeah, in that way, like really. And so there's not really a good, I mean, can you imagine having a compliment genteel? Like, driver was very genteel, like be like, what? And so we tried to really put that into their sort of parlance. And that, you know, there were a lot of people. And also tranquilo, like, and we don't think about a tranquil ride, but it was like a lot of people said, you know, tranquil, the Spanish equivalent. And so things like that I loved so much. And we do a lot of international research. I mainly work on a team that's stateside, so I haven't done a lot of international traveling, but a lot of my friends, we have research sprints that take place at the same time on different continents sometimes. So that's kind of cool.
That's amazing. Well, I had not even thought about that, but what a great way to understand the average rider's priorities and, and what they really like and what they don't care about so much. I also think it's really fascinating, this idea of the language barrier issue and how you're working with that. Do you have a lot of drivers who are like only Spanish speaking or only have limited English?
Yeah, the app is translated into, you know, other languages, and they can choose, and that actually helps us identify like the number of foreign-born or people who at least second language speakers because of which language they have toggled.
Oh, I see.
So I don't know about many. I'm not sure about those numbers, but
so the rider sees it in English, his or her language, and the driver sees it in the.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then there's issues there like translating these compliments and so forth, right?
Yeah,
and getting that right.
Yep.
What are you doing for?
That's a really good point.
What's up? Did I just make you think of something?
Yeah. I mean, if all the compliments aren't the same, and you have somebody giving a compliment, but it gets translated into Spanish or whatever, which one is it going to be? Is it going to be my compliment or his compliment? I have to think about that. Anyway.
You want to talk about that?
No. No.
So let's see. And so how much do you get into the actual design? Your testing and stuff, that's all they have designers. So you just report the results of your testing?
Yeah, and then move on to the next initiative or whatever.
Yeah. And is it always like you're showing a few different designs?
Sometimes. It depends how, like, there'll be a test coming up where we're not sure which design direction, like, because their interactions are very different, where, like, whatever's introduced to the driver. And so that just lends itself to showing multiple. And so there's always the question of, do you show one group the same two designs, or single, like a bunch of people, the same two designs? And of course you would counterbalance them. You'd show one first, and so that you know, and the other second to one group, and vice versa, so that they're not all saying they like the first one just because it's the first one or whatever. So there's that issue. But do you show everyone the same ones, or do you show one group one interface, the second group the second interface, the third group the third interface, and then compare reactions and stuff? So that's called a between study group, where everyone gets a different stimulus, and then you just compare the tasks or whatever the adjectives they use about how it makes them feel or what they think of or whatever. And so that's like the kind of decision that I think about, the pros and cons of, you know, what kind of testing scenario am I going to propose and use?
Yeah.
So,
can you talk about any instances that, like, where you were really surprised that a certain direction was what people preferred over another direction? Because that happens to us all the time.
Yeah. I remember at Ancestry, what was it? There was some feature that I didn't think people would be very interested in. But they were very interested, and that's great. That's wonderful to report.
Yeah.
But I can't remember any specific examples. You know, as a researcher, you try and go in as objective as possible.
Yeah.
And yet it's a fine line, because you see maybe an interface or something, and you think, like, there's a big risk here. Like, I look at it, I remember there was something, and there were 3 choices. They were radio buttons, and they all looked the same. I, like, had to double check. Like, the word was practically the same. And I said, have to make them more different or space them differently or something. I can't see. And then it was like, oh, easy catch. But other things are more nuanced, so you have to you certainly don't want to go in because unconscious biases are really very powerful.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's something everybody, all researchers struggle with because they're being unconscious.
I mean, you're coming from such an educated place to begin with. That's why where we are, we deliver our service so quickly that we do all of our testing sort of after the fact.
Yeah,
and we say, okay, well, what's working and what's not working? Because you just want to get the app out there because it's going to be such an improvement almost no matter what we do.
Right.
Because most of the process of we're replacing our paper or legacy systems that are just a mess. So
I understand the business necessity of that. I'm not such a fan because it kind of goes in the face of upfront design research, but I understand, and a lot of companies do that, and it's just the whole test early, test often, fail often, fail early, whatever. Yeah. That one I think is a little bit of a misnomer. I think people are fine with fail early, fail often as long as you never fail. Like once you start to I feel like it's very risky to suggest that to companies and actually expect that they will do it.
So I like to ask my guests to sort of do a little fortune telling. And so given your extensive experience in UX, can you make any predictions on where you think design trends are heading? We went to flat design. And animated, we saw a lot more animation.
Motion design is like the big thing.
What's next, do you think?
In design, I kind of think that voice, the whole Internet of Things, like we have a Google Home that's integrated with our Wemo, for the lights. See, really where I'm interested is how we can leverage that kind of technology, Internet of Things, to equal the playing field for blind people and for people with special needs or the elderly, because there still is a really big digital divide all over the world. So I'm hoping that that's the direction.
I think we're just going to be talking to the air pretty soon. I don't even think we're going to have devices in 5 years.
Would you know
something? We're just going to be the cloud will really be like the cloud and we'll just...
Would you know Alexa sometimes would be like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. We're like, who the fuck was talking to you?
Oh, yeah. Ours will just start talking sometimes. It'll just do a sales pitch.
Oh, my God. Do you know that one time my brother was house sitting because they had some work done their house. We were away. And so I have an Alexa app, and I was making it talk. And he was in the house, and he said that he kept turning off the radio. He's like, what the hell? And he doesn't know how to use that. So, oh my God, that was so funny.
Well, so I was here for Valentine's Day,
Oh, right.
So what I did is I kept sending Reagan songs through Spotify to the Alexa.
Oh my God, that is so sweet. Wow, I haven't done that. I have to do that.
I told you that Sadie now figured out she's able to talk to the Alexa now.
Does she think that you can talk to anything? Does she try?
Well, it's kind of amazing how they just picked it up. Of course you can just talk to things and they just start playing songs.
Oh my God.
Of course you can do that. What's amazing to me is that you went from Uber, obviously an on-demand service where if you need a car, it's such a unique interaction. Where it's like you need a car now. And you came here from Ancestry, which is kind of like, I need to know everything from my past.
Right.
And I don't really care how long it takes.
Yeah,
it could take a week or whatever.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know how long that's going to take.
With Ancestry also, there's the DNA, which looks back, but it also looks forward with health products and stuff like that. But that's not immediate knowledge. But it is really interesting. I remember when I was in my first high-tech jobs with online education, we always used to talk about just-in-time learning. You don't want to ever stretch things out or just, have a gratuitous, clippy, oh, do you want to know about this? And you're like, why would I want to know about that now kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I know it shows our age. Educational, instructional design, is really informative for the design process. I remember a lot from those days just talking about make sure it's relevant and make sure it's needed, because if not, who's going to look at that? We have a whole cadre of devices like Android and its whole panoply of different devices and makers and all of these things and OSs and blah, blah, blah. Even with Apple, we test things on the 4. I have a colleague with a 4 and I looked at it, I was like, what is that clunky, tiny thing? Yeah. And also, especially in developing countries, because we're trying to be everywhere, there's a lot of bandwidth issues. And so all of those considerations, that is another huge huge part of the user experience. I mean, hands down.
I hadn't even thought about bandwidth issues.
Oh my God. Yeah, they're really big. And there are places where people don't have phones or credit cards.
Yeah.
It's a luxury that we totally take for granted.
How were you able to adapt your approach so quickly, going from Ancestry to Uber? And did you have to adapt your approach? I mean, was there something consistent?
I mean, the pace really here is so fast. It's, kind of mind-blowing. And the complexity, for Ancestry, there's the family tree, core business, and then within that there are record matches and the storytelling part. But that's 5 things maybe. And they were very intense and brilliant teams were engineering them and designing them and whatever, but it was 5. Here it is just in Driver alone at any one time there are probably more than 100 mini projects or big rock projects or this or that. And so I'm not on all of them, but you don't want to duplicate the research unnecessarily when you could be, doing something deeper than that and learning more. So I guess I don't know, pride myself or whatever, just making sure that learnings from one area are applied across another area. And so I'm kind of a connector in that way. And I'm always like that anyway. I was an early LinkedIn adopter. Haha.
And before that, you were with Bank of America and Fidelity.
Oh, yeah.
How was that? Was that frustrating? I mean, just trying to present a forward-thinking approach, trying to push the company.
Not at that time, but Fidelity now is a huge design thinking proponent. They came to Stanford and were residents and did the, semester programs and then went back to Fidelity. And now they train trainers and they're just really, really doing an amazing job. And even before that, and this is in the Boston office, they had a huge usability team, the usability engineers, and some upfront research, but I wasn't on that team, but I just really admired them. Bank of America, it makes a big difference if you're in headquarters and not. We were a very distributed team, so it was kind of less satisfying, really. Even though we'd have a weekly call, it's just something to see people face to face. Although I have to say with Bank of America, and it's continued, there were so many advances. I think we were the second to come out, but Chase just beat us a little bit with the take a picture of the check to deposit it, the mobile deposits. And now I hear they have where you can, I think, just point your phone at an ATM, do some sort of authentication, and then money will be put into your phone or something. It's crazy.
Right.
But, that's how it is. Actually, there are a lot of jobs around here at a certain time. I guess they were all filled or something, but Mercedes-Benz and Tesla, of course, and all of the interfaces for the cars were being, and Chrysler had a huge, and then there was GM also. And
it's interesting. I talked about this with Anand a little bit to get back to the idea of language and how important language is, because you mentioned Tesla and they had that horrible one dude who died. But the reason that happened is because I don't know if you knew this, but the language, they were calling it self-driving or fully autonomous or whatever.
So
he thought, oh, that means
I can
just,
be on my computer.
Paper
oh
or
my
whatever
gosh.
While I'm driving.
Wow.
Or not driving. So they quickly changed all the language around there, and it's just a lesson in how important accurate language is.
And just think, upfront research. What comes to mind when you think about this? That could have been discussed. Oh, wow.
Right. That's a 5-minute discussion, right?
Totally.
What are we calling it? Oh, we're calling it, leave your hands off the wheel. No, let's not do that.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Wow, I didn't realize that. That's really sad. Oops. Live and learn.
What the hell is strategic ethnography?
Oh, I don't know. I just made that up. I put two things together.
I know.
No, what it is basically going in and doing not even has to be longitudinal, but it's very immersive and looking at, that's what I did in Italy, sort of when I was in my 20s. So being in a certain community and then veering toward. Let me give you an example. It's really hard. So in Italy, we were doing a sign language dictionary. It was the nation's first. And so that involved a lot of looking at different areas in the country. So it was representative of the North and the South. And so, like all sign language dictionaries in the States and everywhere else had, at that point, typically been organized in alphabetical order, which is very hearing person centric, or word centric, not sign centric. And so that kind of deep knowledge of the deaf community made them realize that to help them with Italian and to enable deaf people to read was to organize it by hand shape. And so that's strategic because it's a completely different way. And so it was funny, I'll never forget when they put all of the signs that they categorized into order. It was an apple, but it was one of the really little ones. This was in 90, I guess. And they went, okay, now put it into order. Bing! And they touched a button, it went and you saw how the computer said, and all the signs went quickly. It was unbelievable. And so that's how that dictionary is organized, according to the deaf person's outlook, not the hearing person.
Right, and based on the actual physical position of the hands in space.
It was cool. Really fascinating. A lot of the ethnography, what that will uncover is values of a community. We just came back from an amazing scuba trip in Micronesia, and we read all about it ahead of time on the plane. The patrilineal but matriarchal societies. So the women play a really important role in the decision making, but the men sort of are almost nominal. And so that sort of social organization, if you were designing for them, typically we gear things towards the men. But if the women are the decision makers, then strategically you're going to be how can we divide the labor, but not in the traditional way. And so it's that kind of thing where you really get the lay of the land and then you develop. Because if you don't have that, you could completely be barking up the wrong tree.
Have any of those sort of cultural differences like that affected anything at Uber in to something?
Well, I'm not so sure about specifically how it's affected, but we do look at cultural dimensions like collectivist communities versus individualistic. And for example, in Southeast Asia, we see a lot of teams of drivers and motorbikers and stuff there. Whereas here in America, we're very individualistic. There aren't a lot of fleets. It's very much independent driver. And you might have friends, you might have whatever doing it as well, but it's not in an organized way. But Indonesia is a very collectivist society. And so that kind of thing, you just want to make sure that in the design of your product, you leave enough room for the spectrum.
Do you have Uber motorcycle? Is that a thing?
Yeah, Uber Moto.
And you get on the back of somebody's motorcycle?
I guess. It might be a part of a courier too. I'm not sure of that, but yeah, we have Uber Moto. I saw this in Austin too with a competitor, but they have a router in their car. I don't know what the router connects to. I mean, it must connect to something that could also die, but it's a really strong signal so that all over the city, because, you think about motorbikes going under things, I don't know, bridges and blah, 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 and everything. So we have deliveries, courier services. We have Uber Eats, which is awesome. Yeah. There's Uber Chopper in LA, where I guess everybody goes by Chopper. It's funny. Yeah, I'm sure there's a boat thing, maybe in Venice. I don't know. But it's very interesting. It's kind of like in college when I was doing my Europe kind of backpack tour, the Italian McDonald's had pasta and the German McDonald's had beer and stuff like that. And it's just, it has to be relevant. You can't impose, because we do that so often. We impose American everything, norms and stuff. I mean, we have the most brilliant people I've ever met. It's incredible. It's really humbling. But we do have, ideas about sort of the whole range. Like I talked about elderly, talk about the whole life cycle that is being, considered, I'm sure.
Uber's changed the world.
It really has.
So many ways. It's unbelievable. Well, Lisa, it's such a great perk of my job that I get to interview my favorite people.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Just reconnect and see what they're doing, and see what they've been up to. So I'm really thankful for that. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Propellix. That's it. Bye-bye, everybody. I'll see you next time.
Bye. That's a riot.